not going to be like a typical vlogmas vlog, as you can probably tell. And the reason for that is I worked all day today, which, by the way, I apologize, my video yesterday, which, well, it's today, but by the time you're watching this, yesterday's video, wasn't out until like super late, and I'm really sorry about that. I had to edit it in the morning because I had a friend sleepover, and then I tried to upload it while I was at work because I had to go to work in the morning, and the service was just so bad, so it wouldn't upload, unfortunately. But that's all right, we persevere. And now it's like 11 p.m. I worked all day today. There was just nothing interesting to vlog. Like, there would have been no good content in it, and it just would have been like a throwaway vlog. So I thought instead I could talk about something fun, and for that reason we're going to be talking about all the books I read in 2023. And this is going to be a completely spoiler-free video, so if you want to read any of these books, which I recommend you do read most of them, then definitely, like, I'm not going to be talking about any spoilers, so you can still watch that section of the video. I'm also not going to be going in depth. I guess it kind of goes hand in hand with like not giving spoilers. But for any of these books, if you do want to see me give a more in-depth review, I can totally do that. Just let me know, just comment, whatever. But yeah, so like I said, I read 8 books this year. My goal was to read 10, but it's been a busy year, to say the least. End of my senior year, and then all summer I was working, and then beginning of freshman year of college, like, a lot going on. And I still am really trying to get back into reading and like be consistent with it, but I really wanted to end out the year with 10 books done, but at this point it's unrealistic. So we're capping it at 8, and that is what it is. I'm still happy that I read 8 books this year. Like, that's still better than other years, so still something to be proud of. But yeah, I know that probably doesn't sound like a lot to a lot of you if you're like a big book reader, or that maybe does sound like a lot if you're not a big book reader, but for me it's just more realistic. Like, I don't really listen to audiobooks or anything. I really just like to have a physical book and read it, so because of that I don't get through them that fast, and that's okay. But we're gonna start out with the first book that I read this year, and technically I started it in December of 2022, but I read most of it in January, so because of that. But anyways, the first book I read was The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. And you've probably heard of this book. It's very popular. Most of the books on this list are very popular. And this book, it was a 5-star rating for me. It was a 5-star rating for me. Which, by the way, I'm gonna link my Goodreads in the description, because I did rate all of these on there, and some of them I did like randomly write reviews for once, but I didn't write them for all of them, so I'm sorry that that's not very consistent. But this book was so beautifully written. Like, I feel like I've seen a lot of like mixed reviews on it. It actually has a 4.34 on Goodreads, which is like really high, but it was so good. And like, if you are interested in Greek mythology, I don't know that much about Greek mythology, but from what I know, she kind of followed it accurately. But it's also a fiction book, so like the story is fiction, but it's based off of like rumors. It's based off of, like, if you don't know, the story of Achilles and Patroclus, and they meet each other as kids, and then they kind of grow up together, and things develop, and then the Trojan War happens. So it's very, like, a lot goes on, and like the romance in it is written so beautifully. I'm sorry about the notification sound, but yeah, if you like fiction stories that feature romance but aren't like fully like heavily romance, which I really like that, which I mean, this one is pretty heavy on romance, but it's also like has the whole like fiction, like the whole story going on around it, and also it's gay. It's a gay book, so if you like all the things, I would definitely recommend it. It is gotta be like one of my top 3, top 5 books that I've ever read. So the next book I read was It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. If you know me personally, you know, I'm not Coho's biggest fan. I'm not a big Colleen Hoover fan. Going into this book, didn't really know much about her. This was before I had watched any YouTube videos about her books or knew about any of her controversies or whatever. Like, I only knew that, like, people liked her, some people didn't like her. And I was like, you know what? Going in blind, I just want to, like, figure out for myself how I feel about this author. So I started with It Ends With Us because I think that's got to be, like, her most popular book, maybe. If not, like, very up there. And I gotta say, from, like, the start, I could kind of tell that I didn't really like her writing style, and that could just be, like, personal preference. I really don't want to be, like, bashing on anyone's favorite book here. Don't take any of this to heart, but I just didn't find her writing style super enjoyable. It felt kind of like millennial, like, trying to appeal, like, I don't know, like, trying to appeal to younger generations, but in, like, a cringy way at some points. And then just how some of, like, the aspects were just so unserious, like Lily Blossom Bloom being the main character who owns a flower shop, and the fact that us getting, like, knowledge about her past is through her reading letters that she'd written to Ellen DeGeneres, of all people. Like, that's just kind of unrealistic and crazy, and in a story that's supposed to be so serious, and, like, not to discredit the story at all, because I know this is, like, a personal, like, real story to Colleen Hoover, but in a story that's very, like, important and impactful, to just have, like, those, like, weird stuff, and, like, the characters were just so bad. I didn't care about, like, obviously Ryle's supposed to be bad, and I'm not gonna, like, spoil or anything, but, like, I didn't care about Atlas. I didn't care about her friend that she makes. Like, all of those characters, like, the supporting characters, I didn't care about them. And even I guess the main character kind of, but, like, it was hard to, like, really like any of the characters. And when you're reading a book, you want to like the characters. That's kind of, like, I don't know. I gave it 2 stars on Goodreads. Definitely, I think that's the lowest book I rated this year, and it's not, like I said, not because of the story, not to discredit the, like, realness of that, and knowing things about her other books, it's good that this book is the one where she actually acknowledges abuse as abuse, and the character doesn't, where she actually acknowledges abuse as abuse. It's good that she actually does that in that book, but I didn't really enjoy the writing that much, and it was kind of boring and just not my favorite. Next, another Colleen Hoover book. I read Verity. So I read Verity because someone had told me, it was, like, a coworker at the time, she was like, Verity is very different, like, it's a psychological thriller, or it's more of a thriller, and it's, like, different. It's, like, her non-romance book. And I also had bought it, I think, when I bought It Ends With Us, maybe. So, like, okay, I gotta read it. So, this was me giving Colleen Hoover another chance, and because I was like, okay, it's a different genre, like, maybe I'll like it a little bit better. And I did give it 3 stars on Goodreads, so I did think this was a step above from It Ends With Us. I honestly, like, the story, was interesting. Like, the whole mystery aspect to it was really interesting, but there was romance featured in the novel, and oh my god, I just did not like it. It made me, like, honestly uncomfortable, like, not in, like, I wasn't, like, disturbed or, like, offended by it, but just in, like, I don't want to be reading this way. And there was a lot of, like, a lot of smut too, and if that's your thing, no shame. Like, I had a Wattpad era too, like, I get it, but there was, like, gross, like so much, and I was just like, I don't need to be reading this every chapter. And, like, it would go from smut to something, like, really traumatic, and I was like, this is a lot. I don't love Colleen Hoover's writing in general, but I think this one was definitely a step above from It Ends With Us. And I did like the horror mystery aspect to it. Thought that was interesting. And I also like how the end, without spoiling it, the end is kind of like ambiguous. It's kind of like, what do you think it is? Like I did really like that. And I even like recently started thinking about it again. I like was reading like Reddit things about like what the end is and like what people's like theories are, and like I really do enjoy that. So I definitely thought it was a solid story. The characters were meh, besides like the main like villain. Like the characters were kind of meh. The romance was, I didn't like it. And yeah, it was okay. It was an okay book. Next, the next book I read. See, I didn't read for 3 months. From March to June, I didn't read. Then, the next book I picked up was Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. And that book changed me. It changed me. I never thought I was going to be a fantasy girly. So freaking good. Oh my god. I could go on for days about that book, and I won't, but the characters are amazing. I keep talking about like these the characters were amazing. All like 6 of the main characters I loved and adored, and the romance was so good. It's not even a romance book. It's like a fantasy, like action, like there's so much going on, but every now and then she slips in a little bit of romance. And it's so good. It's so good. And the way that it builds and the character development. Like, nothing has made me feel like the way I felt reading that book and reading the sequel, which we're gonna get to. But Six of Crows, immediately a 5 stars. Literally on Goodreads, it has a 4.49. 4.49, that's so high. For Goodreads, that's such a high rating. Like, this book is popular for a reason, because it's incredible. Even if you don't think you're gonna like fantasy, read it. It took me a little bit to get into it, because like the beginning, you're like, what is going on? I don't know this universe. But then once you get into it, you're like, it was so good. Literally my favorite book. Like that and the sequel are like my favorite. So anyways, moving on from that, the next book I read, because okay, I would have just gone right to Crooked Kingdom, which is the sequel to Six of Crows, but I didn't, because I didn't own the book and my friend was lending it to me. So while I was like waiting to like see her so that she could like lend it to me, because this is when I was like on my reading era and I read like 3 books in 1 month. During that time I read Beach Read by Emily Henry, which I literally read in 4 days, which is crazy because it was like over 300 pages. I did really like it, but this book kind of made me feel like, maybe I don't love romance as a genre. I don't hate it. And I don't know, I don't dislike romance books, but compared to like fantasy or even just like fiction books, I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't really know if I love when the story is just all about the romance. And like, there were other aspects, but it's a romance book, so it pretty much just follows the romance. However, I did really like the main character and the love interest. I did really like them. There were some like little like references that were like kind of like Colleen Hoover, where it's like kind of like trying to appeal to younger generations, but like I don't know, I thought it was done better, and like I enjoyed it a decent amount. Like I gave it 3 stars. It wasn't bad, but it just wasn't my favorite, and I think it's just due to the genre. But I do really I liked Emily Henry's writing, and I think I want to read a different one of her books, like maybe like Book Lovers or something, because I have heard that like she has better books than Beach Read. So I would definitely give Emily Henry another chance, because like I said, it was a solid book. It was an easy read. Like it was a fun, more lighthearted one than like Six of Crows, which is so like intense. So it was a nice little break in between Six of Crows and the sequel. But yeah, so that was a 3-star book. Then I read Crooked Kingdom, the Six of Crows sequel. When I say Crooked Kingdom was even better than Six of Crows, do you know with that, like, that, the standards, you can't even see, because that's all the way up there. You take my favorite book and you make it even better, and that's Crooked Kingdom. And for reference, Crooked Kingdom has a 4.6 on Goodreads. I mean, I give it 5 stars, obviously, but, like, 4.6. That's crazy. That's crazy. Because it's so good, and you cannot argue with that. According to this, I read it in 3 days, but I don't think that's true. I think it took me like a week. But yeah, it was so good. Like, okay, it took me like a week to read it. It was like 600 pages, and I read it in a week. That's how good it was. And like, it had all the best aspects of the first one, but like, because it was still like building, it was like it had already built, and it like built even more. Like, it just was so good. It was so good. And I like found out recently that like there was maybe gonna be a Six of Crows spinoff to like Shadow and Bone, like a TV show, and it got canceled, and I was like, I didn't even know that was gonna be a thing, and you're telling me it's gonna be it was going to be a thing just to tell me that it's not. Like, why would you do that to me? But yeah, very emo about that. But if I could, like, if you take anything away from this video, read Six of Crows, read Crooked Kingdom. Do it. I don't care if you don't think you like fantasy. You will. Or if you don't, whatever. But it's fine. Such good books. Like, actually changed me. So then, this one's like a touchy subject for me. But then I read Rebel White and Royal Blue. And again, it was a romance book. And I was really into the romance for maybe like the first 150 pages maybe. But this book was like 400 pages at least, I want to say. And it dragged on. It really dragged on. And I was just like, oh, I'm not invested anymore. Like, I lost interest after the big, like, build to, like, their relationship. I lost interest, unfortunately. But once again, I thought it was a solid book. I just don't think I love romance books. So I gave this one also 3 stars. And it was pretty good. And another, like, gay one, another LGBTQ one, which, like, slay, we love that. Which also Six of Crows, Crooked Kingdom, is also features some LGBTQ characters, which we love. It was fun. It was a fun book, but it just kind of dragged on, and then I just like didn't want to read it anymore. But yeah, the last book I read for this year was Shadow and Bone, and I actually kind of talked about that in one of my other vlogmas videos. But basically, same author as Six of Crows, Leigh Bardugo, and this is like her first trilogy. Like, this came before Six of Crows, I know that, because like chronologically, like, it's the same universe, but this is like 60, I don't know, maybe even 100 years before Six of Crows. I don't really know like when it takes place technically, but I know it's before Six of Crows. But I want to say like this was her first really popular series, maybe. I don't know. But I read just like the first book of the Shadow and Bone series, and I am gonna get back and read the other 2. But right now I'm reading the Hunger Games series, so it was good. I really liked it. I gave it 4 stars. It wasn't on the same level of Six of Crows, but like, what's going to be at this point? Like, if something can beat Six of Crows, Crooked Kingdom, I will be thoroughly impressed. But it was still good. I liked it. And I do really like the characters. Like, I feel like I've talked a lot about characters in this book, in this video, and like, characters are really important, like characterization and stuff, and I really like them. And it's also a female main character, which I like, you know. Maybe I'm biased, but yeah, I don't know. It was good. I don't know the full story yet because I haven't read the other 2, so there's not much more to speak on, especially since I already talked about it. But yeah, I really like Leigh Bardugo's writing and her fantasy and the universe that it's in, so no complaints there. But yeah, that was the whole thing. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you can maybe read some of these books, because honestly, like, I would recommend all of them except the Colleen Hoover ones. Maybe even Verity. Like, you could read Verity, because then I want to talk to you about like the theories. So you know what? The other one I wouldn't really recommend is It Ends With Us, but also I'm sure, like, you know, people really love that book for a reason, so it has its place, and if you want to read it for yourself, read it for yourself. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and say, like, listen to my opinion, like, I'm right, you're wrong. So, honestly, like, none of these books were, like, atrocious. I would recommend any of these, especially Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, but yeah, that's all. I hope you enjoyed this, and sorry it wasn't, like, a normal vlog or anything, but we will get back to those tomorrow, and then I don't know what's in store, like, Friday, Saturday, like, my Friday, Saturday, and those will be the only 2 days, yeah. I don't know if I'm going to do more sit-down talking videos then, because, like, I'm going to be working doubles those days. I don't really know. I guess we'll just wait and see. But yeah, so thank you for watching, and I will see you tomorrow.